The theme is an economic model under attack, and we see a future potentially, a lot of discussion about jobs evaporating. How is the current economic system supposed to absorb that kind of potential or real threat?
Well, it's not clear that the system can do it on its own. And I think that's one of the things that we're talking about here that's interesting, and that, in the U.S., a lot of politicians are beginning to think about this as well. And it is a concern. People are saying, look, if the nature of work is changing, if robots and automation, technology, if we're going to automate more and more activities, and we're not going to need people to do these sorts of things, then what happens, right? And if people continue, and you heard people talk about this here, right? What becomes of someone who loses their job and then has no income? And the challenges that poses to both the capitalist economic system, when the consumers start disappearing and there's nobody around to buy the goods and services, this becomes a problem. So we're beginning to think through the ways to address both the loss of income and the loss of work.
A question on timing. Technology, the entrepreneurs, the disruptors, they can see a clearly defined job that they wish to disrupt, if you will, with automation, robotics, but we don't yet know the jobs of the future. So how do we begin to grapple with, even notwithstanding the question of if you have an agile workforce that is willing to adapt and learn new skills, how do you come to grips with the timing of it all when you potentially have such a great portion of this segment of the population that may soon be without jobs?
Well, I think one of the things, again, we're starting to think about is ways that the public sector can be proactive in this respect. So if the private sector is going to behave disruptively, and it's going to innovate, and it's going to look for new and more efficient and cost-saving ways to do things, and that is going to include displacing some workers and replacing them with other ways of producing things, then the public sector, in anticipation of that, can say, and this is what we're doing in the U.S., we're going to ensure that there is a safety net there, that there are safeguards in place so that as workers transition out of some types of employment, they can transition not into the roles of the unemployed, but into different types of employment. So, for example, in the U.S., we're beginning to think about ways to put people into what we're calling a care economy, so that the nature of work going forward would be oriented around caring for people, caring for our communities, and caring for the planet. And the idea here is that the federal government plays a role in dispensing the funding for the jobs of the future of this type, and the communities themselves create the type of work that they want done in their communities, and so it's a different type of way to think about the future of work.
Great. Okay. And final question on just the forum in general. Is this it's a unique forum where you bring together academia, government, and the private sector. Is that kind of the new reality that everyone kind of needs to get used to, of bringing all parties together to actually get dialogue that will create solutions?
I think it has to be. I think that this distinction, this dichotomy, this artificial division between the public and the private, I think is not serving us well, and I think that's well understood. People are beginning to understand that it's public and private, and that there must be, collaboration, that we must work in cooperation with one another, and we're not going to solve big problems without the two together.